Preamble. I am a late 20s F, and this happened fairly recently. Nothing bad happened to me, but I'm lucky it didn't, and it easily could have. There is a conservation area that I used to like to walk in regularly. It's beside a golf course, near an ordinary subdivision, just off a busy road, and is popular with dog walkers and photographers. The conservation area is fairly well maintained, and alerts its users that there are hidden cameras everywhere. My point in bringing attention to all of this is to say that, by all accounts, this is a very safe, vanilla, urban, wooded area in a populated area. One big thing about me is that I like isolation to recharge. I dislike crowded trails, and by convention go in off-peak hours or when the weather is unpleasant. Not dangerous, but unpleasant. Too cold, lightly raining, foggy, etc. I stay safe, but I like there to be as few people around as possible. In a city, in daylight, I don't feel like I'm taking any risks by doing this. First encounter. There was one day I went at around 4 p.m. or so on a frigid, rainy Monday in November. On days like that, there are maybe only 1 or 2 dog walkers, but today, there was no car in the parking lot except for a dirty blue pickup truck with a man sitting in it. I noticed that he was looking at me, but that didn't really bother me. I was just happy to see the trail was empty. On this particular day, I went to the area to practice my navigation skills. I was learning how to use a compass at that time, and it's good to practice that skill in an area that you won't get lost in. So I decided to go off trail to a big pine plantation, which is a big open area with large, mature pine trees, if you are not familiar. It's not a hiking area, or really that interesting in any way, and definitely off trail. You wouldn't get there unless you really wanted to get there. So I pick my first landmark and sight it using my compass, and I'm pacing towards it. I find myself about halfway there when I hear rustling through bushes, and I turn around to see the man from the dirty blue pickup truck there, entering the pine plantation. Mid-50s white man, a little pudgy, wearing a baggy beige cardigan and blue slacks. I feel pretty alert at this point, feels out of place somehow. I take note, but pretend to keep walking around with my compass because I don't want to seem weird. I look at him. He pretends to ignore me. I am getting a really bad gut feeling about the situation for some reason at this point, and I feel like he's following me. But I have an anxiety disorder, so I try to not freak out for zero reason, and I don't want to ruin my relaxation time. It's just a guy walking around, no big deal. To see if he's following me, I pivot 180 degrees and walk directly towards the trail again. He's still following me. I walk through the bushes onto the trail, still following me. At this point, I was freaked out. The pine plantation entrance is only about 50 feet on the trail, so this guy would have walked 50 feet, entered the pine plantation, then decide that was it for the day? Bad odds. Definitely following me. I quickly exit the trail, and when I'm leaving the parking lot, I see that he's still looking at me. I take the long way home. The experience freaks me out, and I only visit the area once before the second encounter. Second encounter. This time was in January. This time I want to go bird watching. A week prior, I had seen an owl in the same pine plantation. I was practicing navigation again, and I wanted to see it again. I had seen it about an hour before sundown, so I figured that was a good time to try to see it again in the same area. I checked the parking lot and there was no blue pickup truck, but there were 2 other cars with men. One was a red sedan with heavily tinted windows, and it looked like the other one was empty. So I go on the trail again. Today is muddy, wet, cold. Area should be totally empty. Good. Unfortunately, not so. About 20 feet on the trail, I hear footsteps behind me. I don't like when people walk behind me, but it's not a crime, and I'll lose them soon when I go to the pine plantation. I'm sure you know where this is going. When I walk on the pine plantation, there is the same rustling of the bushes before, and when I turn around, I see the same man from before. I feel a wave of terror and dread overcome me, alone in a muddy forest with a possible stalker. But it's still so calm, and it feels so mundane. To confirm my fears, I walk over to the area where I saw the owl last week and pause to look for it. Who do I see next to me is the same freaking guy from before. I am terrified at this point, and every part of me is screaming, "Run!" So I walk as fast as I can to the trail again. I pass some other random guy in the same pine plantation and smile at him, just totally on autopilot. He smiles back. It wasn't until I was in the parking lot where I get freaked out that there was a second person in the same pine plantation. Could they have been connected somehow? I stop briefly in the parking lot and take out a small notepad to quickly write down the license plates of the two cars. This gives the original man to catch up to the parking lot. I am booking it out, on foot, out of the parking lot, and he yells towards me, "Can I give you a ride?" And I just shake my head and keep walking. As I walk away, he begins to follow me in his car. He waits at the intersection to see which direction I'm going in, and I decide to walk in a busy park to lose him. He pulls into a nearby hidden driveway and stares at me and takes out his phone to presumably take a photo of me. He notes what direction I'm walking in, then does a U-turn and drives fast the other way. Conclusion, I took the long way home, filled out a police report, and the police opened an investigation on it. I have not gone back to the conservation area since, and the experience has definitely left me with an ongoing nervousness about being alone. Doubly more because I do not know who the second guy is. I passed him so quickly, I only know that he was mid-50s and had glasses and was bald. The police unfortunately told me there's nothing they can really do at this point. So the best I can do is stay vigilant and try to not let it freak me out too much. Unfortunately, this has totally ruined my love for going out into the wilderness alone. Nothing bad happened, but I think that was more because I was able to escape and lose them, before anything did. To the random two almost stalkers, let's not meet. This happened about 3 years ago, and it is still one of the creepiest things that has ever happened to me. For background, I live in a city of just over 100,000 people. Not huge, but it has a lot of suburbs on the edge of town. I lived near downtown, but my friend lived right in the middle of one of these suburbs. I was leaving her house at around 11:30 at night, and while I can't remember what day of the week it was, I remember not being terribly worried about running into anyone. From her house to mine was around 8 miles, and I was driving an e-bike, which is kind of like an electric moped that can only go about 20 mph. Since the speed limit was usually 25-30 in the city, I was used to cars speeding around me. It was no big deal. Anyway, I leave her place and start driving home. The first half of the trip is uneventful, but as you get closer to downtown, the neighborhoods get rougher. Right around the halfway point, I'm parked at an intersection when I notice a kind of beat-up red Sunfire behind me. I thought it was a bit weird that they didn't pull up beside me, since cars at intersections usually did. I kept to the right side like any other cyclist would, but e-bikes were pretty new in my town at that point, so I figured they just didn't know how much space to give me. The light changes, I drive on, and it takes me another 2 blocks to realize the car is not passing me. This is where I realized things were weird. The car was trailing behind me only about 20-30 feet and was coasting at 20 mph despite the fact that there were no other cars anywhere on the road, so overtaking me would be easy. It was weirding me out, but I figured they would get bored and move on eventually. A couple miles later, I started heading into downtown, and sure enough, the car was still following me. I could only see them in my mirrors, but I could tell there were at least 2 people in the car, so I was outnumbered too. I started to get worried as I get closer to home, realizing that I'm going to have to stop eventually and wondering what will happen when I do. My house, despite being near downtown, was on a quiet street that barely got any traffic and wasn't very well lit. As I'm approaching a yellow light, I decide to risk running it to leave them behind at the red light. I turn left, only to be greeted by another red light. Thinking quick, I turn right on the red, but I can hear the squealing tires as the first light turns green and the car circles around the block, the way I didn't go, to meet up with me. At this point, I'm facing the car on a side street dead on. I have 2 choices, drive towards the car or turn left. The car is not moving, instead waiting for me to make a decision. I turn left as it's the way towards my house, and the car calmly turns to follow behind me. At this point, I'm losing it. Even though it's cold and I'm shaking like mad, I take out my cell phone and call my boyfriend. I know, I should have called the police, but I was freaking out. I tell him he had better get his ass outside of our place right now, because there's no way I'm stopping alone. At the same time, I'm describing the make and model of the car as best I can while also trying not to crash. When the people in the car realize I'm on the phone, they decide to overtake me. As they do, I look over and see two men, rough looking, probably in their 30s. They're laughing their heads off, not in a "what a fun joke," but in a cruel way, like they're going to get me no matter what. It's absolutely terrifying. I figured that they thought I was calling the cops, so I start to calm down. They're still going pretty slow ahead of me, but at least they aren't following me anymore. As I'm coming up to the street I live on, I make sure to wait until they're past the intersection before I put on my right blinker. And they put on theirs. I turn onto my street as their tires squeal again, turning onto the street one block up. I know that they can go faster than me, and I contemplate trying to find somewhere to hide. I decide against it, and sure enough, as I come up to the first intersection, their car is sitting perpendicular to me, waiting for me to pass by so they can follow again. It seemed like it was some kind of hilarious, cruel game to them, watching me try to get away and knowing they could always go faster. As we approached my house, I saw my boyfriend standing on the lawn, arms crossed and leering at the car. He wasn't good for much, but I'm glad as hell he was there. I pulled into the driveway, and as the car was halfway into the driveway as well, they finally saw him. They were gone before I could even turn my bike off, so creepy, nasty men who decided I'd be their fun game for the night. Let's not meet. So, for the past year or so, I've been dating my boyfriend who lives away into town from my rural house. My parents just recently moved out to this super rural, nice but spread out, think 5 15-acre land plots neighborhood, about 15 minutes from the rest of our city and 30 from the more urban part of the city. Mall, restaurants, movie theater, etc. I was working over the summer at a restaurant in this mall area, where I often got off work around 6 and would go to hang out at my boyfriend's at night until midnight, as I'm in college and can get away with it. One night, my boyfriend and I accidentally fell asleep mid-movie viewing, and I woke up at about 1:30 a.m. I desperately needed gas before driving home, so hauled butt out of my boyfriend's house and stopped briefly at a gas station to fill up. Thank goodness, or this story would be a lot scarier, before I headed home. I knew I was stupid for being out so late, being a short girl in my 20s, but there was no other real option. I got back on the highway from the gas station turnout and headed for the boonies where our house was. So, I should note here that the highway leading to the boonies where my house was narrows in the space of a few signals from 3 lanes to 1, and it was fairly common to get oblivious out of towners going 30 mph in a 50 zone on the 15-minute drive out to my house. So, I have a tendency of being semi-unflinching when it comes to passing people, where the lanes taper down to 1 if they're going a few miles below the speed limit on the highway. In this case, I pulled up to a red light next to this white nice car. I think it was an Audi or Lexus, but I can't remember. But definitely not sketchy or anything to me. I passed them as the lanes slowly combined over the course of a few blocks, as we headed into country from suburbia, because they were going about 10 miles below the speed limit on the highway. It wasn't as if I were driving aggressively, I simply happened to pass them in the second lane a few blocks before it merged into one. Anyway, I pulled up to the right turn out to the middle of nowhere where I live, a long country road that basically has just a bunch of random estates and horse properties, and sit at the last red light before you, end up with stop signs, and then the main road leading to my neighborhood. The white car stops behind me, the only car on the road, which isn't necessarily strange, but it's a weekday and super late in a bedroom community. The light turns green and I drive for about a mile, then turn left to head out on the 1-lane rural road leading to my far-out neighborhood. I'm going about 10 miles above the speed limit, about 50 mph the whole way, because I'm tired and want to get home, and the whole time I'm watching the lone white car in my rear view because I'm bored and know this road like the back of my hand. He keeps slowing down to maybe 10 miles per hour slower and then wandering over the white line in the middle of the road, then speeding up at the points in the road where he could pass me with brakes in the line to literally tailgate me at miles above the speed limit. I thought maybe he was drunk or something. Again, totally possible on a weeknight. But instead of passing me while he rides my ass every time he could have just gone by, he simply gets super close to my bumper in these areas. I'm starting to get annoyed, and about 10 minutes of this goes by, and I pass the first of 3 entrances to my super rural neighborhood. Now I'm starting to get a little weirded out, because whenever someone lives this far out, they tend to turn into this first entrance about 90% of the time. White car continues to follow me, and I kind of start to speed up because I'm weirded out when he doesn't turn in. I get to the 3rd entrance with him still behind me and swing a left at semi-dangerous speeds and without any turn signal because I figure I'll lose him around the curve and haul ass up the super steep twisty hill towards my house. I think I'm good when I look in my rear view, and he's still about 10 yards behind me, no turn signal either. So, I fucking slam the pedal down going up the hill to my house, which is about a half mile or so long and insanely twisty. I'm basically counting on the unlikeliness of my fellow neighbors to be out this late as I book it at about 20 miles above the normal speed for safety, around tight corners up this hill. I've got water bottles and stuff flying around in the back seat. I'm freaking myself out a little with the speed, but this guy is still right there behind me. There is no way in hell at this point that he can maintain this speed as a casual fellow neighbor. As I'm going an insane speed up a hill, that's a freaking life hazard. So, I get to the left turn for my street, my house is second on the right, and this guy is still glued to my tail. I'm starting to freak out and dialing my boyfriend on my cell as I make a snap decision not to turn into my driveway because it's a solid 20-foot run to my front door and hard to get in the door in a panic in the country darkness. My parents always turn off the damn porch lights when they go to bed. I always go on runs around the neighborhood so I know the roads well and pass my house, turning right to head even farther out into the country. The white car follows me still as I'm careening around unevenly paved, hilly roads at about 50 mph. I keep going straight, even as the road turns into super uneven, unpaved dirt hill straight ahead because I know it loops back to my street eventually. The second I hit the dirt road at about 50 mph, my sturdy SUV lurching but holding steady as I haul ass up the dirt hill while yelling at my boyfriend that someone's following me, the white car's headlights completely disappear behind me and I speed away and up to the right. I'm staring in my rear view the whole time while I blather to my boyfriend about how this guy followed me for 15 minutes in the middle of nowhere and then just disappeared. But the full moon showed no one following me even with their headlights off, God forbid. I have to assume the creeper was scared off by the dirt road taking over the paved one, as the car he was driving was really nice and a little city car, a coupe, that couldn't have handled the dirt roads at that speed. I ended up getting home without seeing his car again behind me or on my street where he might have been waiting if he realized it was a loop, but I couldn't sleep for hours that night. I woke my mom up in a panic and she told me I shouldn't come home so late and that I should drive to a police station or something, but I was dumb and didn't realize. Also, I thought it was illegal to call the cops while driving because our state has a law against using cell phones while a vehicle is in motion. Lesson learned. But yeah, definitely reminded me of that advice where they say, if you suspect you're being followed, keep turning right. Because if he keeps following you, there's no question that they are actually following you in a circle. P.S. The hill where I escaped had a left turn leading even further out into the country that I suppose he may have lived on, but I have never ever seen that car go by outside my window in the 2 years I've lived out there, and also the speed he was tailing me at on that hill was basically suicidal if anyone had been coming down the opposite direction of me. I'm sure he was tailing me, and that far out in the country, it was freaking scary. Thank you for watching True Scary Stories from Reddit. Comment below and tell us which one was your favorite. If you enjoyed today's video, please like it, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe for more by hitting the bell icon to get notified when new videos go live. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.